friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany, where I have new videos every week about books and the geeky mom lifestyle. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. You may recognize his name as the author of the very popular series Eragon, but this is his first sci-fi novel and his first novel for adults. So if you're wondering how the book is and if it's something you might want to read, keep watching for my spoiler-free review. The first thing we need to recognize here is that To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is a tome. This book clocks in at nearly 900 pages. It is an epic space opera that can be read as a standalone. Now you might be thinking, that's a really long book. Does it need to be that long? And I would say no. If you don't yet know what To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is about, I will give you a brief synopsis of the first couple of chapters. The main character is a woman who is a xenobiologist, and she works for a company studying alien plant life and animal life on planets that they are considering terraforming for human colonies. At the beginning of the book, she's getting ready for a party because they're celebrating their last night on the planet that they have been working on. And she's having mixed feelings because there's a celebratory nature to this, but on the other hand, this was a project where she was able to be with her significant other, and now they're probably going to be apart from each other for months at a time. But then that night he proposes. Life is good, the future seems bright, everything looks amazing. She just has one last little task she's got to complete before they ride off into the sunset, and you just know something is going to go very, very wrong. So last thing she has to do before they leave a planet is do kind of a routine check of a drone that was downed around some biological matter, and in the process she ends up stumbling upon some alien ruins. And then something bad happens. And then more bad things happen. You start the plot of the book. I don't want to spoil anything, but you do get first contact with aliens in this story. You do have alien tech and different alien cultures, and the world is slowly unfolded through the course of the book. One thing I will say about this, and I don't want to harp too hard on it, but you can definitely tell that this was a female main character written by a male author. Is it the worst example of this that I have seen? No, it's not, but there are for sure moments through the book where I'm like, okay, yeah, I can tell. I can tell it was a guy writing this book. It definitely did not need to be as long as it is. I had an interesting experience reading this because I had a partial galley with part one of the book in ebook format, and then I had the complete audiobook as a review. So for part one, I was reading along with the ebook, did a mini review, and then continued on and listened to the rest via audio. So I will say this, part one is fantastic. It felt like a sci-fi thriller to me. It was very tightly paced, had lots of big reveals, kept me on the edge of my seat and really riveted. I was very excited to see where the rest of the book was going to go. But then after part one, it definitely starts to meander a lot more. The writing becomes very bloated, the pacing is a little bit uneven, and the character development, given the length of the book, feels inadequate. Not that there's no character development, but it never gets too far beneath the surface. On the other hand, this has an expansive world, and it's clear that a lot of time and care and thought has gone into the world building. In fact, there are multiple appendices explaining different terminology, talking about the science behind some of the faster than light time travel and some of the other things that get brought up in the book. There's a lot of thought given to alien culture and just various minutiae of the world building, which I think is what a lot of people enjoyed about the Eragon series to begin with. In my mind, the question then is, who should read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars? Who would be really into this book? And my answer to that is, if you are the type of sci-fi reader who loves the minutia of sci-fi world building and is really into plot-driven storytelling with lots of action scenes and extended battle scenes, you will probably love To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. However, if you are a sci-fi reader who prefers a more character-driven story and you want a lot of development to your characters, or if you want a really tightly plotted, fast-paced book that is quick pacing throughout, or if you want a sci-fi book that puts a lot of emphasis on politics and political intrigue, your experience is not going to be as positive. And I can tell you, as the type of sci-fi reader who is the second of those two types, and obviously there are more types of sci-fi readers out there, but we're generalizing here, this was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I really, really loved part one of the book because the plotting was tight enough that I could get past the lack of character development, and it read more like a sci-fi thriller. But that pacing and that tight editing and tight plotting does not continue through the rest of the book. And as someone who really likes my sci-fi to be one of two things, either very character driven or really heavy on politics and political machinations, I struggled with this one. I am less interested in having lots of action scenes, especially lots of extended action scenes, and this book has a lot of them. So in terms of pacing, you have this really tightly plotted thriller type part one, and then the rest of the book is kind of these long, slow bits that can often feel repetitive, and we'll talk a little bit about why that is, punctuated by lengthy scenes of intense action. Space battles, gory hand-to-hand combat, action and chase scenes, all of these more intense, lengthy action plots mixed in. And then occasionally you'll get something where it's really about the politics or it's really explaining stuff about the world. And those I did tend to find interesting. I did appreciate the detail of the world building, but the effect of it on my reading experience was muted because of the more bloated writing in other areas of the book. And you kind of got to ask yourself, I think, how many times do we really need to see repetition of the same things happening over and over again? How many times do I really need to see how difficult and boring it is to travel for long periods of time and space when you're the only one awake and what you're doing during those times? Once? Sure. More than once? Are we gaining anything? No, not really. I do think that sometimes the in-between scenes were intended for character development or were intended for world building, but they often tend to feel excessive and don't go as far beneath the surface as I would like them to. One thing that I do want to point out also for people who were fans of the Eragon series is that, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is his first adult novel, and it is a novel written for adults. So if you're expecting a more PG version of Eragon set in space, that's not what you're going to be getting here. There is quite a bit of language, there is a sex scene and some other like sexual joking things that happen throughout it. There's also lots and lots of violence, which I think should come as no real surprise, but there's a lot of gore, battle scenes, aliens with tentacles, people losing limbs, you know. This is throughout it. So don't go in expecting this to be another YA book. It is an adult sci-fi novel. So let's circle back around to the question I posed at the beginning of this video. Should you read this book? And my answer is maybe. It kind of depends. If it sounds like the kind of sci-fi book that is to your taste, it's definitely worth checking out. If this sounds less your cup of tea, you might consider giving it a pass. It is a very long book, so the time commitment there is not a small one. But if you do want to read it regardless, because there is still quite a lot to like, don't go in with super high expectations and just kind of know what you're getting yourself into. Talk to me in the comments down below and let me know any of your thoughts or feelings. Have you read this book? If you did, how did you feel about it? And if you haven't read it yet, are you planning on reading it? Did this make you more or less likely to pick it up? And does it seem like it's something that would vibe with your taste in sci-fi? Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.